This week on Brian Ross Investigates, Profile in Courage.
My name is Brian Wallach. At the age of 37, I was diagnosed with ALS.
4 years later, Brian Wallach has defied the odds, fighting the disease that was supposed to be a death sentence. With his wife Sandra leading a campaign for a new law to get access to new treatments and raise funds for research on the rapidly progressive degenerative disease.
I say hi to you both because they turn their pain into purpose.
Even as the disease progresses, he has never given up, sending messages of hope every day on social media.
Our two daughters are my reason for waking up every day. I'm really proud of what we've done. I did not completely believe it was all possible.
Plus, the 1-year anniversary of a very dark day in American history. More than 700 people had been charged with crimes for their role in the attack on the Capitol, and the FBI still looking for more of them. Who knew what at the White House, and what did they do or fail to do?
It's hard to imagine a more significant, a more serious dereliction of duty than that.
And this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with the choices made by the editors of Mediaite.
What a horrible mayor he has been. Wow. So, sayonara, sucker.
From the studios of the Law&Crime Trial Network in New York City's Herald Square, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to our friends on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined as always by my colleague Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin with a profile in courage, the story of a young man diagnosed with a disease that was supposed to kill him years ago. But Brian Wallach and his wife Sandra, who are related to me through my daughter-in-law, have, as President Biden said, turned their pain into purpose, somehow finding a way to get a bill through Congress that would speed up access to new treatments and increase research into the crippling disease that Brian has been diagnosed with, ALS. Rhonda?
That's right, Brian. ALS is a particularly cruel disease, striking young people without warning, with rapid progression, robbing them of the ability to control their physical functions. But even with the difficult prognosis, Brian Wallach, he's just really confined to a wheelchair, his voice rapidly fading, he's helped to make an incredible impact in finding a way to fight ALS.
It was a death sentence.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
ALS has long been known as the Lou Gehrig disease, named for the legendary New York Yankee who died from the fast-progressing neurodegenerative disease 2 years after the diagnosis forced him to retire from baseball. But Brian Wallach and his wife Sandra were not prepared to give up. Veterans of Democratic politics who met on the campaign trail working for Barack Obama and went on to White House jobs. They launched a campaign to increase funding and research to cure the dreaded disease. And now, because of the campaign they launched, there is new hope. President Biden signed into law last month legislation that would accelerate access to new drugs and increase funding for ALS research. The bill passed the Senate unanimously, and the president praised Brian and Sandra's courage and determination.
The entire world was in front of them. Perhaps a run for elective office at home in Illinois, or working for this White House, raising 2 beautiful daughters until everything changed. The coughs, the cramps, the twitches. Brian and Sandra are joining us today virtually. I say hi to you both because they turned their pain into purpose. To Brian and Sandra, to the patients and caregivers who built and led this movement, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we're joined now by Brian Wallach and his wife, Sandra. Thank you so much for being here. President Biden said you turn pain into purpose.
Brian, thank you so much for having us. It is a privilege to join you. We were so heartened by President Biden's words, as we had spent the last 2 years fighting for a bill that will give every ALS patient and so many others hope where there was previously no hope.
And Brian and Sandra, what is the prognosis now for Brian, for you, Brian?
Well, today I have actually outlived my prognosis. When I was diagnosed, I was told to expect to live 6 months. Today, the average ALS patient lives 2 to 5 years. So of the patients who were diagnosed the same year as me in 2017, 80% have passed away. So I am one of the lucky ones. And I plan to keep going for as long as I can.
Even as the disease has restricted Brian physically, he is active every day, sending messages of hope on social media, posting videos of himself at his daughter's school events. "Just a dad," he wrote. And this video on the way home from picking up his daughters at school as it began to rain. "Here's to rainbow umbrellas, kindness, and to those moments each day," he wrote, "where you can't help but enjoy this life."
I'm incredibly proud of Brian. I'm really proud of what we've done. I did not completely believe it was all possible. And so Brian has inspired that belief in more being possible, even with his own spouse. So it certainly, though, to your point, Brian, it's very hard. Having this disease is extremely challenging. So one thing we have been so focused on is how do we better support the ALS community so that they have what they need to both take care of themselves with respect to the disease and then have the energy and the capability to mobilize and drive this grassroots effort that has been the remarkable result of this movement for the last several years.
And it seems your 2 daughters are part of the battle, part of the campaign.
They sure are. What we've realized is that a diagnosis like ALS impacts the entire family. Everyone's involved in the fight. And our 2 daughters are my reason for waking up every day. And sometimes are the best source of inspiration to fight this thing.
I want to thank you both for being here, and just hats off to you for the campaign in the face of incredible obstacles. You've done so much, and you've shown that things can get done in Washington if there's a will.
Well, Brian, thank you for having us. And thank you for shining a light on this fight. It means everything to us.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Brian Wallach's social media messages are both heartwarming and heartbreaking. He's worth following on Twitter at Brian Wallach. Up next, a day that we might want to forget but definitely should not. The attack on the Capitol 1 year ago, and what happens next. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today, and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
And welcome back. It's been a full year now since the U.S. Capitol was attacked by a mob that sought to delay or upset the certification of Joe Biden as president. At Rhonda, we are learning more every day about what was and was not done to stop it.
That's right, Brian. The House Select Committee investigating January 6 has interviewed hundreds of witnesses, made criminal referrals on 2 people who have refused to testify, Trump advisor Steve Bannon and former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And they have unearthed thousands of emails and text messages that continue to raise questions about President Trump, what Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney has called a dereliction of duty, Brian.
That's right. So to learn more about what is to come in this investigation, we're joined now by Mia Bloom, a professor at Georgia State University and a fellow at New America's International Security Program and author of Pastels and Pedophiles Inside the Mind of QAnon. And from Washington, D.C., tonight, retired FBI agent Brad Garrett, also a consultant for ABC News. And Brad Garrett, let me start with you. More than 700 people have been charged, but the FBI says it's still looking for people based on the photos and the videos they took of themselves as they ransacked the Capitol.
So, Brian, one of the problems, obviously, is that no one was really arrested at the scene. So you're playing catch-up, basically, for the last year. And a large number of the people that they have ID'd is through tips. People see them on television, they see FBI posters, and they go, oh, that's my neighbor, that's my aunt, that's my uncle. I mean, some folks have even turned in their own children. So you have that side of it. The other is going to be cell phones. What they did was they pulled all the cell phone traffic in or around the Capitol on January 6th, and through that, they were able to ID people. But the 300 plus left, I think the issue is maybe they know who they are, but they don't really know yet. And so they've got a lot of work ahead of them.
And Mia Bloom, let me ask you, who are these people? Not all of them are big fish or members of extremist groups, or are they?
Well, no, not all of them are members of extremist groups. According to the data that's being collected by a number of my colleagues, either at the University of Maryland or at the University of Chicago, about 20% have a criminal record. But we do see quite a number of these people that are affiliated with anti-government militias or with groups like the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters, including the first 2 trials that we will see at the end of February, one person being a self-proclaimed militia person, and the other is from Texas, and Owen Schroyer, he is a 3%er. So we do see some overlap between the far right and the people who were at the Capitol, but there were also tons of regular people, grandmothers and students and people who thought this was like a vacation for them. So really we don't have a profile, we just have a lot of different people who converged that day.
And so, Brad Garrett, a question for you from Rhonda Schwartz. Rhonda?
And Brad, what are the lessons learned for law enforcement from all this? Looking back now, what have we learned about could this happen again, and how could it be handled better?
Well, let's start with it certainly could happen again. But, the real issue is if you have really good corroborated intelligence, then you need to act on it. I mean, the FBI had information, DHS had information. I'm talking about people talking about how do you smuggle guns into the Capitol? Who are we going to, quote unquote, arrest once we get inside the Capitol? Where are we going to rendezvous in caravans and come in and go out of the Capitol? I mean, there's just an unbelievable amount of information. And then, you lay on top of that, the motivation, obviously, by former President Trump and others, that they should be there and legitimizing their behavior there. And so the real question lies, will we have anything tomorrow? Of course, I don't really know. Are the Capitol Police better prepared? Yes. But if you had intelligence like you had 1 year ago, and you have the same number of people in riot gear and available immediately, it could happen again. I presume they don't have that kind of information. I haven't seen fences go up. We'll have to see what the profile of physical security looks like in the morning here. But you have to listen to people. One of the big faults, apparently, according to recent reports, is the intelligence community didn't share with each other. I don't think that's actually accurate. I think the information was there, and for whatever reason, the Capitol Police chose not to act on it. Now, again, politics could be right in the middle of this, where they were told to act and do a certain way. That remains to be seen.
And Mia Bloom, let me ask you, one of the remarkable things you were telling us was that the role of women, which has not received much attention, was actually quite substantial.
It was very important. It was very important in terms of the organization on social media, organizing the buses that took people to the Capitol, paying for hotels. In fact, when you look at the first person shot, Ashley Babbitt, became a martyr for the MAGA cause. But there was another woman killed that day, Roseanne Boylan, who is the subject of podcasts by MSNBC, Ayman Mohyeldin. So we understand that women played a very important role in terms of the connective tissue, linking the different groups together, as well as the fact that, the women were the ones being able to promote this idea that, you need to do this, you need to step up. It reminds me a lot of the way that the jihadis encouraged men to go join the jihad in Afghanistan and Syria. But I think we have to understand that, if nothing really happens as a result of January 6th, and I think Merrick Garland's speech today indicates that there will be consequences, then last year was a dry run for 2024. And so we have to be very careful. Maybe less so tomorrow, but we have to be vigilant for future attempts to undermine the election.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Mia Bloom and retired FBI agent Brad Garrett. Much more to learn, much more to come on this story. Coming up next, here, this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with the choices made by the editors of Mediaite. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Time now for this week's winners and losers in the media as chosen by the editors of Mediaite. And we're joined by Aidan McLaughlin, the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, which, like the Law and Crime Trial Network, is part of the Abrams Media Group. And Aidan, we begin with your choice for the winner, which surprised me, the CNN New Year's Eve team of Anderson Cooper and an apparently quite inebriated Andy Cohen, who delivered a belittling farewell to outgoing mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio.
After 4 years of the crappiest term as the mayor of New York, the only thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on is what a horrible mayor he has been. Wow. So, sayonara, sucker.
Wow.
2022. It's a new year.
All right, Aidan, tell us why that was a media winner.
So just for the record, Andy Cohen has been defending himself. He said that he's not going to apologize for getting a little inebriated on New Year's Eve, which I think is a sentiment we can all agree with. The reason that they were named winner is just because of the rating. CNN's New Year's Eve special, which took place in Times Square, it was the most watched event on cable news in America in 2022. So it started at 8 p.m. It ran over 5 hours, just the portion with Andy Cohen and Anderson Cooper. And it averaged 2.12 million viewers over the course of that time. In the demo, which, as you know, Brian, is the sort of advertiser-coveted age demographic, they drew almost 800,000 viewers, which is really a staggering amount for cable news right now, particularly at that hour. It's also a huge amount for CNN and was CNN's most watched event in months. It also meant that the network beat out Fox News and MSNBC in the ratings for the show, which is a big deal because the network has had a pretty rocky 2021 in the ratings. It beat Fox News in January for the first time in years, but then sunk down to third place for the rest of the year as Fox News surged back to first. So the show had plenty of highlights, a little bit of controversy, but ultimately really good ratings, and that's why they were a winner.
So this is the road to success for Jeff Zucker now and his CNN ratings issues?
I think it's a typical CNN ratings story. When they have big events like this that are sort of must watch, everyone turns to CNN. They have that with breaking news. That's why January they had such high ratings. It was because of the end of the Trump administration and the riot at the Capitol. When you go down to weeks that do not have big events or big news cycles, CNN drops to third behind Fox News and MSNBC. But it's really for big events like these that everyone tunes into CNN. And Jeff Zucker is really good at making those shows happen.
Well, that was quite a show to watch, that's for sure. Now let's turn to this week's loser, Sean Hannity at Fox News. Why Sean Hannity, Aiden?
That's right. So the House Select Committee, which is investigating the January 6th riot at the Capitol, published a letter that they sent to the Fox News host requesting his cooperation in their investigation. Now, the committee says they're in possession of thousands of documents, including a trove of information that was given to them by former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Now, in that trove of documents are texts that Sean Hannity sent to Mark Meadows around January 6th, and they published a few of those in that new letter. One of them was Sean Hannity warning the Trump administration that things could get ugly right before January 6th. Another one said that which was sent after January 6th, urged the Trump administration to not mention the election ever again. Now, what's so stunning about this message is that it displays on the part of Sean Hannity a real understanding that Trump's lies about the 2020 election are dangerous and directly resulted in the riot at the Capitol. And I suppose you have to give him credit for that. On the other hand, what's disappointing is that in the year since on air, Sean Hannity has declined to tell his viewers that Trump bears any responsibility for the violence that happened that day. And in fact, has continued to propagate this idea that there were, problems with the last election. And that it should be looked at and that Trump was hard done by it. So, Sean Hannity revealing in private that he had concerns about what was happening that day, going on air and not saying that there was any connection between the riot and President Donald Trump, that's a real problem for him.
And so quickly, in 15 seconds, what about the First Amendment issue here of Congress trying to get testimony from a reporter?
Well, I think that's an issue as well, and that's certainly how Sean Hannity is going to fight it. So far, he has not commented publicly about this. Neither has Fox News. They have not responded to any of our requests for comment. So we'll see what their strategy is going to be to combat this. But I have a feeling he's going to cooperate at the end of the day. All
right. Aiden McLaughlin, the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, thank you very much for being here, and welcome to our program for the year. And that is our program for tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here next week on the Law and Crime Trial Network.